Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, the weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. Man, I'm recording this on a Sunday, but it feels like a normal Monday, like a perceived Monday to me. Dude, ever since the live letter, I have not had an afternoon where I don't feel tired. Doesn't matter if I nap in the afternoon, because then my sleep at night gets screwed up, and it doesn't matter if I sleep good at night. I don't know what's going on, and it has affected my productivity a great deal. On top of doing 3 drafts of the Baldesion Arsenal video, and quite frankly, not liking any of them, thus not releasing many videos in the past week. So that's unfortunate, but we'll get back to it. We also have patch notes coming this week. We obviously have the actual patch coming next week on August 11th, and we've got all sorts of videos and stuff planned for that, and that should not be a problem. Even if I don't like it, I will get those things out. I will make sure that they are fast, efficient, and hopefully accurate. But with how tired I am, let's get to the Q&A. Of course, we have to thank our sponsors over on Patreon who have been supporting us through thick and thin. Thank you to anyone who is actually supporting over there, because quite frankly, it's not deserved. But your names are scrolling through on the screen. Of course, we have our Patrons of Darkness, Khuja, Jenova, and Kurenai Oni. Thank you to both of you for your long-term support, for your massive support, and thank you to everyone also on Patreon. And all of you tuning in. Let's see if you guys had some good questions, and let's see if I get to go take an early nap, or if I'm going to need another cup of coffee. All right, first question. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Mr. Happy. Long time since my last question. Been watching and keeping up, though. Hope you're doing all right. Tired, but I'm all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. My question this week is about PvP. Another cup of coffee is the answer, huh? A lot of people meme and criticize on PvP in 14, but I've been playing Frontlines, done a couple of feast matches and really enjoy it, but also feel there being a lack of something to really motivate the community. Ding, ding, ding. Nail on the head. My question is, what do you think would be a great way to motivate the community for PvP? The other thing I can really think of is a total revamp of PvP to truly motivate the community. So they've been running into this issue because they really just want to motivate people with rewards for performing well. However, the gameplay loop for when you do not perform well makes that kind of a difficult thing. People need to feel like they're at least taking something away, or taking something away from any match, even a loss. And quite frankly, Final Fantasy XIV's PvP makes that really, really difficult to do. At the very least, if there's a lesson learned about what went wrong in that fight. But so few people really perceive PvP in that way, especially in the Final Fantasy XIV community, that it's tough. The only thing I can really think of is to increase the EXP rewards again, although that just makes people AFK for whatever reason. People just don't want to frickin' play the game that they're trying to level up in. I have no idea why. Or they need to do tiered rewards that are available more so than they are now, where they have like top 100, top 10, first place for Feast, and they need to do something similar for Frontline so people feel seasonally motivated to go and do those larger scale contents. It doesn't have to be something that's permanently like limited time, but there needs to be something new more frequently. New mounts, new gear, new something. If there was new gear more frequently, if there were new mounts more frequently, and not just anytime a new mode came out, might help. If there was something to spend wolf marks on that was maybe useful in PvE, maybe make the PvP gear the same item level as like crafted gear or something like that. I don't know, something along those lines, but people want a reward, and it doesn't feel like they care about even adding rewards other than the seasonal stuff for the feast. That's a problem. When the dev team doesn't seem like they care, why should the community? And quite frankly, I don't feel like the dev team cares, or at least not enough. Wow, this question's so short, I'd have to like edit the video to keep it like in one frame on its own. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi, by the way. When you're doing your Realm Reborn restart, what surprised you the most? How quickly it went. So many people surprised when I replayed through Realm Reborn. My biggest surprise was how quickly it went. I deliberately tried to slow myself down. I refused to teleport for a great many levels. I made more frequent use of the Choco Keep. I was a DPS solo queuing through everything. You'd think that would make it take longer, but 63 hours was less time than I anticipated it taking. So I was just really surprised at that. And remember, I was slowing myself down. If I was somebody who like was leveling another character and I decided to like throw my Aetheryte earrings on and like make sure I had the FC with the buff at all times, although I did have an FC with a buff for a good portion of time at the very least. Made sure I was like efficient with food usage, went like something like a tank or a healer with instant queues, or, in my case, even like, ask people in my stream when I'm doing this, like, hey, anyone want to do a party finder for this instance, blah, blah, blah. Like I could have done it a million times faster. Some of it streamer privilege, some of it not, but it still went fairly quick. And I can't wait to see how quick it goes after 5.3. And of course, we will have a video on that. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. What's with people not saying hello? Rude. Last week, you talked about how Summoner needs a rework to fix its issues. As a long-time Summoner main, I'm not aware of any issues that require the machinist treatment. Can you elaborate more on what you mean? The biggest issue is the actual pets. There are times when things like Bahamut or Phoenix will literally just, instead of attacking, they'll take the time to like float over to you when their range is so massive they don't need to do it. You can ghost pet auto attacks by transitioning into a phase too quickly. And to be fair, the rotations people have come up with generally avoid that, but anyone who doesn't do research, who doesn't understand that kind of thing happening, is a problem. A lot of it is just down to the way the pets interact with the job. And on top of that, they've simultaneously moved further away from this more like warlock-y style playstyle while still keeping it as the job's identity. I think it's like the job started with this identity of like this dot job with a pet. And then they're like, well, let's make the pet more important. Oh, let's make the pet even more important. Let's make the pets like the whole huge damage phase, you cycle everything around, but you still need to keep these dots up. We'll make it easier. We'll just do try disaster reset on trance entries and stuff like that. And it's like they're stuck between two identities, their pet identity, which has those issues I just talked about, and their dot identity, which is just filler. And it's weird to have a filler identity, not just a filler phase, a whole identity that's filler. And a whole identity that's what you would suppose is your job identity that only kind of functions, it just functions at less than 100%. I'd like to see them go all the way into the pet identity. I don't think it's that difficult for them to do with the changes they've made in the previous expansions. And I think, above all else, they need to fix pet AI. I refuse to let them introduce another pet job until they've reworked the way pets work in this game in general, and Summoner has suffered from those pets being a monumental annoyance for years. All right, next one. Ooh, they got some short ones this week. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey there, hope you're doing all right. Hello to you, first person to say hello in 3 questions. Quick question today. When you did Ultima in Uwu, what was the biggest struggle for you and your raid group? Was it Annihilation, Suppression, or something completely different? I'd say the absolute biggest struggle was the time frame with which we actually had to work with. After the first 9 days, I think, we lost full 12+ hour availability. Actually, no, it might have been after the first 7 days. I don't remember, but I know that after a certain period of time, we lost the full availability of hours that we had. And on top of that, E3 was coming up. Doing what I do, I had an interview with Yoshida that came out of that E3. I went there for a few other assignments, but I largely sacrificed my E3 to fit more hours in. I went to my few appointments and then went home because it was in LA and I was living in LA at the time. That was actually probably the biggest struggle. Was not having enough hours after the first handful of days. In regard to the actual fight mechanics, you know what? I want to say Titan Bombs. I just remember a lot of hours where we'd like just not pass them consistently enough. And even when we did, I'd then say it came down to predation. We ended up cheesing it eventually. We ended up just, tank LBing and throwing up like super buffs in order to just survive an Ifrit charge because, quite frankly, when we didn't, we often lost 1 or 2 people. And even when we did that, we often still lost 1 or 2 people to maybe like a Titan knockback or some other like rogue AoE that was like a pixel too close to somebody. So I'm going to say those 2 things in regards to our Uwu prog. And you know what? I think we still were like 11th or 12th in the world, which is nothing bad. But I definitely felt like there was this energy in the last few days where we really wanted to have it dead already. We knew we could, but there was just these things, little things that would add up every fight that just delayed us long enough. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello. Oh my God, it's a lot of text compared to the last 2. I hope you're doing well, long-time viewer, second-time asker. I believe the first years, I'm also incredibly tired and accidentally closed down the window after typing out a massive wall of text, so now I have to retype it. On that, you know what, just for that, I'll make sure I read it all. Might be full of typos. As a bonus, I'll donate $5 to a charity of your choice. Oh man, charity. You know what? It's a charity I worked with for a lot of years. It's not really very timely right now, but the Save the Children Foundation, man. Honestly, I attribute a lot of my early career to the Save the Children Foundation because I was given the opportunity to stream in front of hundreds or thousands of people before I was anybody. I was doing a night shift to raise money up for Gaming for Good. And we've raised like, how much did we raise? I'm trying to remember the math because we had the US aid matching 8 times 400 subs. So yeah, it's like what is it? So that's 4, 5, 16. Yeah, just in subs alone, we raised like 16,000, I think, in like 2 nights. And then on top of that, we did some extra work with them. Otherwise, that was direct donations that were also matched 8 times. And that's a charity. I haven't done much charity work in the last few years. Just situation has not allowed for me to feel like I can step away from what I do for a living. And it's honestly, it's so far from my initial mission statement when I started streaming. I wanted to make just enough money to live and then do the rest for charity. And that is not how my life has turned out at all. I don't think my life will turn that way anytime soon. And it's unfortunate that my original values are kind of compromised. But it is what it is. Life takes us where it takes us. And I'm still super grateful to do what I do. But Save the Children Foundation, that's one that I haven't done anything for them in a while, and that's the one I'd like to lean you towards. Might be a long question or not. TLDR, do you think that giving more attention and exposure to 24-man raid would help alleviate performance anxiety in new raiders? I believe it is stated they won't make 24-man equal to 8-man. No, they never will. 24-man will always be puggable. And I don't know what you mean by more attention and exposure. I'm assuming because the current 24-mans have plenty of attention and exposure. And my phone just went off, and I have no idea where that came from. Oh, here it is. Whee! I should probably turn that down, but I'll just put it back for now. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what you mean. I believe that one of their only real, as far as at least state concerned. Stepping into harder endgame content. Worst case of performance anxiety. It's because it's most people's first MMO, and quite frankly, a lot of people who like Final Fantasy as a franchise are not like hardcore raiders or even hardcore RPG players. They're people who love a franchise and love to enjoy it casually. And 14 gives them all the options they could ever want to live a casual life in an MMO. It's not really anything like every other game that's always so focused on like what players can do in regards to the combat system. Oh my god, this is a huge wall of text. I shouldn't have promised that I'd actually read it. It leaves with 8 and 24 mans. 24 mans can in any case be zerged by people with only basic knowledge. Yeah, I know, because I go healer and I res people. This is not conductive to learning or introducing player to actual raiding. So here's the big thing. I can tell you now that you want to add in-game stuff that encourages people to raid. I'm going to give you the reality of the situation. People who want to play well, people who want to pursue a higher level of combat or content, they will pursue it. If they don't want to, they won't. The difference is 14 has a lot more stuff that isn't cutting edge, which means that the people who it attracts are not always the cutting edge people. It's by your definition, this wouldn't really encourage as many people to get into raiding as much as it would encourage people who aren't playing the game, who aren't interested in it, to start playing, which is also a good thing. But 24-mans are never going to be the vessel for it. The closest thing you'll get is something like Baldesion Arsenal or whatever we're going to get in Bajja in 5.4x, not even in 5.3x. But it's just not that kind of game. It's not meant for that kind of audience. And quite frankly, I'm kind of glad that this isn't a game with 20 to 24-man rating. But it gets plenty of attention and exposure. And you can't make the gear the same as 8-man unless you're going to make it the same difficulty. And you have to design fights entirely different for 24 people. You're not going to do a 24-man light ramp. You're not going to do a 24-man Nisi dance. You're not going to do that kind of stuff. You're going to largely focus on just the amount of damage that's actually going out and hardly even the mechanics. Maybe you add a few little things here and there to fluff it about, like debuff passing or stuff that targets like 2 or 3 people, and that's it. And they kind of already do that. It's just not punishing to the point of instant death. They are also very relevant to the main story. In fact, you have to do the Crystal Tower in order to do the 5.3 story. You have to do the Stormblood raids to do the Resistance Weapon quest line. And quite frankly, even if they did anything more for the 24-mans, it's not going to encourage anyone to go into 8-mans. They're not meant to be difficult content that does not encourage anyone to go into 8-man raiding. And that's going to be the case. I'm not even really sure where the question was going here because I was reading it as I was answering. And I feel like I adequately answered the question that was actually posed. And these other things don't really help the way that 14 is designed. It doesn't help encourage it any more than it already does. Like, it's already kind of at its maximum. And it's honestly, if it's not at its maximum with 5.3 requiring Crystal Tower, it's gonna at least be getting there very soon. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays, Moon Days. It's a Monday, Moon Day? Okay. Hey, Abs, how's it going? Sleepy, but I'm all right. Hope you're doing all right. My question is, do you think Savage Raid should include raid-wide status effects rather than targeting certain players' roles that may require the use of items or duty actions rather than healer simple attuning? No! You never want to... In Final Fantasy XIV, it would be very counterintuitive to the game's overall design to encourage people to use items. Now, to be fair... we have had a phase of Final Fantasy XIV where that's happened, and there are places where it still is. I know that in Eureka, probably in Bajda as well, Palace of the Dead, having things like Echo Drops or Spine Drops or things like that, it's great to have those kind of things if you're not already popping other consumables that would get in the way of that. So step number 1 would be to separate the cooldown between the consumables that get rid of status effects and the ones that are actually useful. As for duty actions, I'm actually not a huge fan of duty actions. The only time I think they've ever done one well is, and this includes Ramuh, is Catastrophe. Every other time it just feels silly to me to have this just like one action that is used for one thing or one time, like Vril. It's just every time you see an attack that's targeting you, use Vril. It's literally Vril check. It's an attention check. And quite frankly, it's not something I find very interesting. I think they could be done better. I think there are times where what you're saying here, duty actions to deal with certain things, but it's not any more interesting than having it be a healer-specific role or having a bard that can Wanderer's Pain, which is actually kind of nice on some fights. So I don't think they should include it. I don't see it as actually enhancing the gameplay to encourage people to bring these kinds of consumables into these kinds of encounters. Another really short one. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hello, by the way. What's with all the rude people? Hi. Since 5.2 is about to come to an end, I wonder what your thoughts are on the worst patches of 14. Oh, I've answered this a million times. Patch 3.1. Patch 3.1, in my opinion, almost single-handedly reburied Final Fantasy 14 into obscurity. Now, I'll say this. 3.0 started that trend, and 3.1 just kind of inherited its bad decision-making. 3.0... cool, Heavensward story, people loved it. Here's a couple primals. Now here's this raid tier. Normal mode raids, to this day even still, not really something that's super exciting for a lot of people. People like to do it for weekly clears, and some people like to maybe hop into it with its friends. It's something that's beginner friendly so people just getting to that level range. But then they introduced Gordius. Now, it's only 4 fights, and no one could get past the third one. I say no one, but, the vast majority couldn't get past the third one. There were people who couldn't even get past the Gatekeeper, which hyper discouraged people from even caring about raid content. Now, raid content is a very small portion of Final Fantasy XIV's community, but when you don't have anything that's too substantial at the beginning of expansion for your average player, and then you don't have anything that's substantial for your raid players, you've essentially disappointed every single end of the community at that point. And leveling didn't have nearly as many quality of life things as it does today. While there's more levels to go through now, we had far fewer options at the time of Heavensward's release. 3.1 then released Diadem, which flopped mega hard after a few days, maybe a week at most. And then you had Lords of Verminion, which flopped immediately. You then had Thordan, who was an EX trial that kind of fit into Gordius. Wasn't as hard as anything in Gordius, but it did not help encourage anyone to get back into doing Gordius, and it discouraged people from doing EX trials. It discouraged, and people who had already been beating Gordius didn't care about it after more than the first time. And then what else? 3.1's main scenario quest, a couple dungeons here, it was bad. 3.1, I was genuinely afraid I was going to have a 1.0 situation again. And honestly, 3.2 didn't do a great job of turning it around. Yeah, they brought in the Warring Triad, which is exciting for longtime Final Fantasy fans. Yeah, Midas was generally better received, but Midas was... People forget, Gordius got nerfed into the ground after it was gone, after it wasn't relevant anymore. Midas had to get nerfed in a month because of how badly it was affecting the community, because now the second fight was the hardest fight that no one could get past, that all the people who wanted to be not hardcore raiders couldn't get past. And honestly, even after they nerfed it, people struggled with it. It was bad, man. That's why we have creator tier raids, because the lowest subscription we've ever had was pretty much during the time of the beginning of Heavensward. And they don't want that ever again, and quite frankly, I don't blame them. So 3.1 wins my terrible patch award, I guess. Well, this one doesn't have an actual hashtag, but it says the word hashtag, so it counts. Having a good time? You didn't say hello either. Nobody's saying hello anymore. What happened to this generation? Hi. I don't know what it is about you, but I gravitate here for some reason. Not enough to say hello. You asked if I was having a good time, though. That is considerate. And I am. I have 3 questions. Oh boy, coming at you perspective of someone who's only played 3 to 4 months, but has finished the main scenario and not done much else. 1, what jobs do you recommend for newer players to get into different roles? Basically, easy job to introduce somebody into the different playstyles in 14. White mage for healer, hands down. Honestly, still, even after you've been introduced, it'll probably still be the one that you play. Tanks, quite frankly, doesn't really matter. Play whichever one you want. Maybe stay away from Gunbreaker, because it's a little bit more DPS-centric. in regards to the way its rotation actually like functions on a minute-to-minute basis. Paladin might be a little confusing for new players, and that's surprising to hear, but the swap between the physical and magical forms, quite frankly, I think about that from a new player perspective, and it's a lot different than, hey, every like 90 seconds, spam this one skill 5 times, like Dark Knight and Warrior are. So probably Warrior, to be honest, but also Warrior's not really a job I like right now, so it's kind of a weird recommendation. So Dark Knight. I'll go Dark Knight. I recommend Dark Knight for tanks. As for caster, Red Mage is the easiest, but I don't really like Red Mage. Black Mage is the most fun to me. For ranged, Dancer. Dancer is pretty easy. And for melee, I like Ninja the most, but I don't think it's probably the most beginner-friendly. I'll say Ninja anyway. I think it's the wrong answer, but still. 2, what jobs would you recommend for an Australian player? Honestly, I know Australian players who play all sorts of jobs. The only one that they really actively avoid seems to be Machinist, maybe Summoner. So just avoid those 2. That's at least what some of my Australian friends tell me. But even when they play jobs that are not like anti-ping, they still clip because of, you know, any sort of lag is going to affect them because of where they're playing from. And I would like your opinion on the following, the most and least complex jobs. I don't think there's a real answer for that, because Black Mage would theoretically be like one of the least complex jobs, but the amount of knowledge, fight knowledge you need to make it work is more complex than I feel any other job demands of the game. Well, so the rotation's the least complex, but the brain power that goes into playing it correctly is the most complex. Whereas then you have something... Oh, you know what, though? I'll say Machinist. Machinist is, I think, one of the least complex jobs in the game. Most complex? I can't really say... I mean, I want to say Summoner, to be honest, but I'm thinking about like how you min-max on these jobs. I'm gonna... My opinion is Summoner, quite frankly. I never like trying to relearn Summoner just to do like a few minutes of footage for like a video or something. It never pleases me. I don't like... But it's an opinion. I'm not saying it's like an absolute. It's just an opinion. So those are my answers. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. What? Where are the hellos? What's wrong with you people? Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. What are your favorite battle systems in RPGs? Numbers. It's honestly, I don't have an answer. I don't have a favorite. If the game's either fun to play or it isn't. And some games do turn-based combat and they do it really poorly, Chrono Cross. And then there are some games that do action combat or action RPGs and they do it fantastically. Like... The thing is, action RPG is always such like a, how do I say, a tentative term, because you pretty much throw numbers on a game and everyone calls it an RPG. That's why numbers is my answer, because literally God of War, everyone's like, oh, it's an action RPG. And I'm like, it's really an action adventure game just because he's got a piece of gear that has a different effect. That pretty much makes it an RPG. Like the barrier for entry to be called an RPG nowadays is very, very low. So if I can say that, if we can use God of War as an example of a really good action RPG, then I will. But then you can also have ones that are absolutely terrible. Quite frankly, I've played so many in my life, I wish I could name them all, but I've blocked them out of my mind. Star Ocean 5. There you go. That's not a great action RPG. That's not a good action RPG at all. I have 2 shirts for that game. Either way, that's a good example of a bad one. So bad action RPG, Star Ocean 5. Bad turn-based RPG, Chrono Cross. And but then you have good ones on the flip side. So there's no system in particular that I like lean towards. It's just whatever the game wants to do needs to come together, and as long as it does, I'm cool with it. This person said hello. I'm taking it. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, Mr. Happy. Hello. Thank you for making videos about 14. Thanks for watching them. I've learned a lot about the game through them. My question is, with the way they handled Job Quest in 5.0, should they start the future 6.0s at a lower level than what they have been doing? No, I think they'll still do 10 levels worth of real job quests for new jobs, but expect whatever the max level quest is to be like we had this expansion. I don't see them just saying, well, we're not going to write quests for these jobs anymore. You know, it'll just always be whatever the last 10 levels are for the expansion they were introduced. From this point on, we'll probably just skip them, do role quests like we had this time around, and then have a level like max level quest tie-in. I think that's what they'll do. I don't think they need to start them at a lower level. Also, I feel like you wrote more than this, but it just says ... and there's no view more button. Like you can see right here, there's literally no view more button right here. No, I don't think it'd be any better to start a lower job. What they've been doing has been working pretty okay. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Mr. Happy. Hello. Hope you're keeping well and safe. I hope the same for you. What the heck is this? LSEP? What is this? Why do I feel like that's my browser not understanding? I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. I don't know if you or anyone else has noticed this, but a lot of jobs this expansion have either been reworked or been requesting a rework. Right now, Dark Machinist Ninja have been reworked. Monk is going to be reworked for 5.4. And I've been hearing requests from other players and yourself that jobs like Bard, Summoner, or Warrior would benefit from a rework. Even Dark has been asking for another one. Not sure how players feel about Astro and Scholar. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think the developers mentioned they wanted to change some of their design philosophies for Shadowbringers, and that they most certainly have. This might explain why there are so many big job changes in this expansion. I can't help but be taken back when looking at the bigger picture. Is 14 going through some kind of phase where they want changes to happen due to a change in design philosophy or longevity? Or does it appear to be happening in this expansion a coincidence? I think... How do I want to put this? So I think we hit a breaking point with Final Fantasy XIV, where jobs that have just been adding things to their old design philosophy, going into Shadowbringers' adjusted design philosophy, they're not necessarily always like not correct or not fluent or like not functioning, but it doesn't add up to an as satisfying an experience. We've got the jobs that they have reworked, like Machinist, like Ninja. Dark Knight, quite frankly, was my favorite tank to level, other than Gunbreaker, which was kind of cheating because Gunbreaker was like playing a DPS. So I don't even really know exactly. I think Warrior's in worse shape, quite frankly, than Dark Knight, but that's just my take as someone who doesn't play tank. Bard, Summoner. Honestly, Bard would be better if they just took away Apex Arrow. If they don't even have to add anything. Just don't even have Apex Arrow anymore. And Bard, Stormblood Bard is still a wonderful, wonderful thing. Summoner I mentioned earlier here. A lot of the jobs that are getting that kind of attention are jobs that have just kind of compounded design philosophies over expansions. And it's just not working. You just can't sit on your level 50 design philosophy and keep piling things up, or it eventually falls over. Summoner, I think they've just kind of like Leaning Tower of Pisa'd it, where they're like halfway towards a full rework, but it feels like they don't want to push it all the way. Monk, Grease Lightning, they've like, well, we got to do everything. Everything's got to be based around Grease Lightning, about keeping up Grease Lightning, about getting Grease Lightning, around, losing Grease Lightning. Everything needs to be based around that. And they want to get away from that because it's very constricting. It's why monks had so many weird skills. And I feel like we're on our way there. Black Mage has hit its breaking point. I don't know how Black Mage gets adjusted next expansion without needing a full rework, because it's perfect right now. Bard was very much the same way in Stormblood. It was perfect in Stormblood. Now, I say perfect, I'm sure there were like actual like miniature problems with it, but the overall design philosophy was perfect. Summoner, other than when you die starting all over, I'd hit a pretty good breaking point. I actually really kind of like Summoner now. It's just every time my brain melts whenever I start playing it. Or contrary to what I said earlier, it's just that my brain melts whenever I start playing it, so I stay the hell away from it. And I feel like that's what we're seeing. We're seeing both a mix of enough expansions to make job designs that have survived that long feel really archaic and finally be tackled, on top of the change in job design not clashing well with the old design philosophy. So it's a multi-phase thing, and I don't think it's because Shadowbringers change it. I think these things were going to need to happen regardless of the way they approach Shadowbringers design-wise, just because they're going to keep adding ideas onto these jobs, and quite frankly, some of them need a fresh take. And I'm really curious to see how the Monk one works out, because that might give us an idea as to what kind of changes we can expect them to be making going into 6.0. This one has no hashtag, but they said hello, so you get answered. Hi, Mr. Happy. Hope you're having a great day and even greater one afterwards. I hope so, too. I just don't want to be so tired. Thank you, and I hope you're having a good one. My question is on speech bubbles. I played some games like PlayStation Home. Is PlayStation Home a game? It's not just the thing in the past, or you mean like on PlayStation Home? I don't know. And it makes conversations much more lively, and the world always seem alive due to the speech bubbles. In that game, no one ever reads the chat boxes. What do you think about speech bubbles in 14? I've never been a huge fan of speech bubbles in any game, personally. I can't stand when I see like, am I thinking Ragnarok Online, where you go to the town and it's just a fuck ton of speech bubbles because of all the bazaars and people talking to each other? I can't stand it. I think it's really intrusive to my overall gameplay, and I'd rather not have it. I think it's okay a little bit when NPCs do it because they only do it as you approach them, but I can't imagine. Gives me an aneurysm thinking about Limzilla Minza or like the quicksand on Balmung with speech bubbles. Granted, the quicksand on Balmung gives me an aneurysm regardless, but better an aneurysm than an erection, which is, I'm sure, what's happening most of the time when people go there. So yeah, no, they've shown no interest in doing speech bubbles. On top of that, with things like display limits, I sincerely doubt they'll ever go down that route of doing that. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. What's up, Hap? How you doing? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. First time asker, so I have a bonus of your 1.0 anima for your teleport. Kill me. Anyway, my question is on Unreal Trials. I only watched your overview, so I don't know if they mentioned it in the last live letter. It seems like Unreal Trials are not going to have any mechanics changed in these old fights, only consistent of bigger HP pools and damage increases. Yeah, scale to the current patch. That's correct. So they're scaling it to whatever patch that trial is actually unlocking it. Yeah, you got it. If I recall correctly, none of the Realm Reborn EX trials had Enrage. Oh yeah, they did. I'm trying to think because I feel like you've got to be right about it. At least one of them, I feel. Here's the thing. I never saw them, but they were there. I'm pretty sure. I don't know, because I'm thinking to Titan Extreme, and I'm almost positive I've seen Enrage. Not on hard mode. Hard mode didn't have any Enrages as far as I know. Extreme, I'm almost certain. I need to go watch my old guides. I feel confident that they did, but now you've got me questioning it. It's been so many years. I'm almost positive that Titan enrages after 2 rotations of his end phase. I want to say, I think it's like 10 minutes, 30 seconds. Now, he's the only one I can remember because I so seldom ever saw enrages. And I swear Titan's the only one because we were like 4-manning the last phase because everyone died like super, super quick. Somebody help me with this in the chat because I gotta go watch my own guides to even fucking remember. I'm going to say if they didn't have them before, then yes, you're probably correct. They wouldn't have them now, but I feel like they did, and thus they probably will. We just saw them a lot less back then, so it's a little harder to remember that they even had enrages. Hashtag Mr. Happy Monday. Oh, wow, this one's very recent, only 6 hours ago. Hi, Mr. Happy. You need to co-host with the kitty. We can barely see a little hot. Yeah, he's in here somewhere. I think he's napping, though. Where is he? Oh, yeah, he's in a box in the back. So I've tried my version of rerunning a Realm Reborn Heavensward and Stormblood on a true alt, separate account, but I'd only bought the first 2 expansions. A Realm Reborn itself isn't bad. Stormblood felt a lot worse and stretched out, but I noticed 2 things that are just not good. Zones in cities, a Realm Reborn plus Ishgard, and the complete lack of job balance at all expansion endgame points. Level 50, 60, 70, less than 70. I do suspect the zones are just PS3 vestiges. No, they're not. They've said before that that's not a vestige of the PS3. Also, I don't even know that I never had an issue with that. I don't understand. And for the lack of bouncing, I don't know. We already jumped through hoops to justify that job difficulty must not reflect our DPS, but the discrepancies at those points go above and beyond all reason. Any ideas why they keep such sloppy design? I don't see anything sloppy. Old expansions, the game's not balanced around old max levels at current max level. It just isn't. That's never been a secret, and that's never really mattered because you're going back and doing old stuff. The only place it matters is Ultimate. And quite frankly, what ends up happening with Ultimate is it becomes easy. Easy. Super easy, as a matter of fact. Which is hardly a problem. It just means that some bit of your rotation doesn't survive into that level range. But yeah, in the zone split, I don't know, I never had an issue, but it's always been that way, so maybe that's why. Yeah, but we know okay, so the question is, why do they have that design? They're not going to go back and change old zones. They've been very, very clear about not completely restructuring the way that those old zones work and connecting them. Because of certain technological decisions that have been made for years. That's actually technical debt from 1.0, the fact that the game had to be redesigned or rebuilt from the bottom up, borrowing what they could from 1.0 in under 3 years. That technical debt has haunted them pretty much forever, and will continue to. Now, it's fixable, but they've shown lack of interest in doing so. Not even lack of interest, more so we need to be working on the new stuff to get people interested or to keep people interested, not the old stuff that people have already done. Well, that gets new people in, it's not really satisfying our current player base, which is why Yoshi P didn't even order them to do the Realm Reborn restart. He said it wasn't a priority, and his developers went and did it anyway, without him ordering them to do it. So that's the only time things like these seem really to go back and be remedied is because of that, but they're not probably ever going to fix. I say not probably because they can do whatever they want. It's their game, but they've given us the inclination. They're never going to go back and merge those zones. There's spaces between those zones that need to be completely designed from scratch. The way that it's handled on the server side is probably very different. Top of that, things like the hunts, things like maps are completely designed around individual zones and individual rules for those zones and identifiers and stuff like that. So to do it from scratch, they'd have to redo all of that. It's essentially the only time you'll see this change would probably be an entire engine rework. So if they ever do that, that's when I'd expect stuff like that to change. But even with that, they're never going to balance the game around old max levels. If they want to make a change that's based on the current max level, they're going to make that change. That's never gonna fail to be the case. And I don't honestly see any other game balance itself around its old level caps. I've never seen that before personally. All right, so my headache is actually coming a bit to a head, so we're actually going to start the lightning round now. I apologize because there are probably some other good questions. I haven't even looked ahead, but I'm so tired. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm gonna go through whatever I can for this lightning round, and yeah, we'll see what we get. Let's see. I'm looking for hashtags. Hello, I hope you're doing super fine. Why are the fights of 14 not designed around crowd control? Because then you have to bring certain jobs, or you have to give every job the same crowd control, and it's not particularly exciting. That's why they're willing to do stuff like silences. Sometimes you can slow or stun, but other than that, they don't want to force you to have to bring certain crowd controls to beat certain fights. They want every job to be viable for every encounter. That's pretty much going to be that one. Stormblood, we learned, it's only been a week. My question is, the amount of time we've been on the first, do we have a guess on how much time has passed on the source? I'm sure that they kind of answer it. It's how do I say? I think it's like 15 minutes from the time we're on the first to when we're on the source, something in that vicinity. When we go back, because they're really surprised to see that we're back so soon. So, but we don't know how much for 5.1 and 5.2. So we could probably say like 25 minutes maybe, since we actually went there for the first time in 5.0. But it can't be very high. We also don't know because since we helped repair the first, at least to some degree, I'm sure the time lapse difference isn't quite the same anymore. So that's the one thing that we really don't have an answer for. So I can't give you an exact answer. There's no way to really guesstimate it other than adding 5 minutes per patch and hoping that it didn't really change that much. With the looming though delayed announcement of the next expansion, do you think we will see any significant changes to the inventory system? No, because they've just been giving us more and more inventory and stuff like that. Armory chest, I only thing I want is more ring slots. That's it. Now, would it be possible to separate bag gear for things like Disciple of War or for like between Disciple of War and Disciple in Hand and Land? Theoretically, but odds are because of reasons like you've stated here with the amount of data that needs to be handled every time a character zones in, it probably doesn't get any better at any point without them doing a very, very like low level like systemic rework to the way inventory is handled. And I have a feeling that's not going to happen. I'm feeling because of the frequency of data saving every 15 seconds as opposed to the standard every 30 seconds and the sheer amount of data that is actually transferred. I would not expect that there's going to be any systemic changes to the inventory, but I will welcome it at any point because they can always do with improving that. How you doing? You can take a bonus of fresh New York pizza. I would love that right now. Last week you mentioned Erebos falls in the hierarchy. Where Erebos well, I said where I think he falls in the hierarchy of Void Sent. Do we have the hierarchy of Void Sent? Do we know what it is? Yeah, it's in the first Encyclopedia Eorzea. It explains the Void Arc hierarchy, but it's based on what Eorzevian scholars give them, I believe. Like their placement is based on what Eorzevian scholars give them, and I don't think it's actually like I don't think there's actually like a system for it that the Void Sent understand. But it's basically if a Void Sent can command another Void Sent, it's a higher level, like a higher part of the hierarchy than them. And so the ones that can control mass amounts are usually at the top. So that's why I think that's what it was based on, but it's been a really long time. So it's hard for me to give you a fully realized answer. What's the quick backstory? Short sentence. Let's see. Could you describe what your experience like progressing on the fight and how much time you as a top raider had to spend on to beat it? Almost every Savage tier is anywhere between 30 to 60 hours. that I'll spend. It really depends on the type of group that I'm running with. If it's a group that wants to go really hard the first week, but they're not like world prog, like want to beat it first kind of group, or if it's no, we need to be in like the top 5, top 6, or even at the very most top 10. That changes a lot. It also depends on the fight. Stuff like Final Omega, for example, took us until that Friday, so that took us closer to like 60 to 70 hours. And then you have stuff that's beaten on like the second day, which only takes like 30 to 40 hours. But I'd say but that's like going hard, like from the like moment the patch comes out. We'll beat the first fight in like 2 hours. We'll beat the second fight in like 6 hours. The third fight in like 10 hours after that, and then the last fight usually like 15 to 20 hours on top of everything else. So that's my usual experience with it. But that's quite frankly, and then ultimates are a whole nother story. Those are anywhere from like 150 to 200 or more when it comes to actually progressing those. So it's a bit of a time investment. I think people kind of forget just how much time you need to throw at a raid to beat it the first time, and they just look at how long it takes to re-clear and they go, it's not too bad. No, it probably beats your ass for a while the first time around. Re-clearing is never quite the same experience to compare to. Currently going through Eureka. Just another question going through Eureka. We've gotten to the dreaded Pagos, wondering if it'd be better to spend speed onto Pyros and Hydatos to grab the Eureka armor. For the elemental bonus? No, you can't do that. No, it doesn't work. You won't be able to obtain the armor without having a weapon. So you need to do the weapon in order. I think somebody asked me this on my stream. I wonder if this was you who then came to my stream. No, and also I wouldn't worry about getting elemental armor. You don't get elemental armor in Hydatos. You get it in Baldesion Arsenal, which is in Hydatos, which is a whole nother story. It's not worth it. Just do your Pagos weapon while you're in Pagos, because you're going to need it to even get the elemental armor in the first place. Just the Kieran's Osode or the Vermilion Cloak until you're all the way up to Baldesion Arsenal. Let's see. No, I don't know. There's some people telling me that between 3015 and 3030, I said something real funny. I've got a bit of a weird question, because while the MSQ was superb, you look at everything Shadowbringers feel like, man, Stormblood looks great. I don't. I mean, I think Stormblood was better than Heaven's Word, like as an overall content expansion. And I think it's easy to say that because we had all of Stormblood, where we literally have 5 patches of Stormblood to compare to 2.5 patches of Shadowbringers. It's always easy to say that. And also, it's easy to say Heaven's Word was great when you only have like 2 patches of Stormblood. Stormblood was far superior to Heaven's Word, like as an overall expansion, even if you didn't like the story as much. The content features, the new stuff that came during that, the ideas that were introduced, even a few jobs I really didn't like. That doesn't matter. Every expansion, there's jobs I don't like. Stormblood is way better than Heaven's Word, and quite frankly, I find Shadowbringers to be, at its current point in Shadowbringers, a higher tier than Stormblood. But I know what you're saying when you say that, because things have changed a lot going into Shadowbringers that has not always made people happy. 2 questions. One thing I missed from WoW is huge continents composed of various zones to explore. We just went over this, and it's probably... the reason why the zones are split have nothing to do with the console. That they've made that apparent before, and PS5 is not going to change the way that they load zones, because the game's still going to exist on PS4 and PC, and its current server structure doesn't allow for that. Again, if they do an engine update, I wouldn't be surprised, but the PS5 is going to have no impact on whether or not they make sweeping changes to the zone, because the game still has to function on the PS4. They're not going to do away with it because it doesn't have the same technical problems that the PS3 did, like a lack of a memory stick, for example. 2, Garlean armor for players. Will it ever happen? We have bits and pieces already, and the further we go, it feels like we've gotten a little bit more here or there. So yeah, we'll always be getting more stuff. Haven't seen Mary on State of the Realm. He actually streams at the same time as State of the Realm a lot, and we've been moving the show around between Tuesdays and Fridays so frequently. Sometimes we do it at noon, sometimes we do it at 4. So there hasn't been a schedule lineup. We're trying to make it happen. We've been trying to make it happen. It just hasn't happened yet. And it looks like those are all the questions. Oh, no. It looks like there is one more. Dome and Enclave reconstruction. In 4.x, I used materia and dungeon drops to do this, but that's no longer viable. Do you know any alternatives? Yeah, you just get stuff from like Eureka. I mean, you can just take anything over there, and you can still do materia. You just won't be doing the same types of materia. 5.0 materia is no longer viable. Oh, did they lower the vendor cost on that? Damn. Platinum pieces are perfect. There's only a few methods to get them. I mean, I honestly would probably be Eureka would probably be the answer, or even just random dungeon trash that you pick up. There's got to be stuff. I haven't looked at vendor prices because, quite frankly, it's not worth my time to teleport over to the Dome and Enclave and sell stuff. But Eureka lockboxes probably have enough like pieces or desynthesis, clear demi materia. Honestly, other stuff from desynthesis as well. But clear demi materia from desynthesis, if that hasn't changed, because now I'm beginning to wonder if it has, should also be a good alternative to that. And I think that might be all of them. Yeah, sorry, I just did that lightning round, but my head is just, it's not pleasant. I need to go get some water and just kind of chill for a little bit. So thank you for putting up with that. I did my best. Did my best. Like I said, I haven't recovered from the live letter, and I have no idea why. But thanks, everyone, for tuning in this week. Thanks, everyone who asked the question, even if it got lightning round. Be sure to ask your questions in the comment section for next week's episode, which will be the day before patch 5.3. Looking forward to it, and I hope you're looking forward to the videos. And hopefully, I'm in a better state than this by the time it comes around. But thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you again to our patrons of Darkness, Khuja Cross, on Jenova, and Kurenai Oni. And I'll see all of you next week. Thanks for hanging out. And until then, take care.